All right, welcome sixth grade math teachers to our professional development meeting on how we can use literacy within our sixth grade math classes to deepen our students' understanding of the various math concepts they'll be encountering in sixth grade. So before we get started, we'll go over our agenda for the meeting. So I have a group icebreaker activity that we'll all do together. One that I've even used in my classroom with my students, so that could be used again. We'll talk about what disciplinary literacy instruction is. We'll go over some research regarding math literacy, and today I have two specific math strategies that I think will be very useful in sixth grade, and some student samples and examples that my students in my classroom have done with these strategies, and then an opportunity for all of you to try these out on your own, see if there's any questions you have or any adjustments you think would need to be made for these strategies to work with your students, and then some resources for you to take with you. So first, the icebreaker activity. It's one that I do sometimes on the first day of school with my students, but I've modified it slightly for today's meeting. But I like using a beach ball where you can write questions on the outside. For the first day of school, I usually have questions about summer and what my students are excited about for the school year, what are they nervous about, academic goals. But for today, the questions are all related to math. And so what are some challenges we might have? What are our favorite things about teaching sixth grade math? What is something we would like help with this year? So when you toss it to someone, wherever your thumb lands, that's the question that you answer. It's just a fun way to get to know each other and to discuss the topic for today. All right, thank you for participating. Next, so we'll be talking about what is disciplinary literacy instruction, and this is something that all of you do in your classrooms and might not even be aware of it. When I've been in different classrooms on this campus, I've seen every single teacher here that teaches math using writing. I've seen math journals. I've seen sentence frames up on boards for our English language learners. I've seen teachers here using reading and close reading strategies with annotating and highlighting a math word problem in order to solve it. I've also seen a ton of speaking using academic vocabulary in math and listening where students are paired up with a partner. A lot of that I've seen done during our designated English language development time. So these are strategies and things that a lot of the teachers are already doing, which is excellent. And we're going to talk about why those are important strategies. So when we're talking about disciplinary literacy in general, we're talking about how we can use literacy to teach the subject area concepts and skills. So we're not actually teaching reading and writing here at all, but we're using those skills in order to teach. Here it's math, but that could obviously be done in social studies, science. Our focus will be math. And then here's just clarification on the difference of what do we mean by concepts and skills. So concepts are very specific ways of thinking about things in a specific course. So there's different ways that you think when you're solving a math problem than if you were completing a science experiment. And then the skills are the practices that are particular to an area, a subject area, or a discipline. So the skills that we want them to be able to obtain, we're going to try to get there through literacy, through reading, writing, speaking, listening, all those different modes of communication. So I found a really great definition online that stuck with me and that I always refer back to. And it gives a great definition of what is math literacy specifically. So we know what literacy is and reading and writing, but what does that mean for our mathematics teachers? So this is a quote I got from the Organization for Cooperation and Development, and it says, within math literacy, it is the capacity for individuals to identify and understand the role that math plays in the world, make well-found judgments, and to use and engage with math in ways that meet the needs of the individual's life as a constructive, concerned, and reflective citizen. So this is what we want our students doing as they progress through their academic careers. So why is this important in math? These to me were some of the top 4 reasons why literacy is really crucial for mathematics. So with Common Core, we're really wanting to focus on mathematics in context. And what that refers to is a lot of those real world situations, and not just the ability to solve any random math problem, but what does it mean in its context, in its real world situation? How would you approach and solve this math problem? Development of conceptual understanding. So what this is referring to is not just having students solve math problems and isolated events, isolated methods and facts, like we usually see with multiplication tables, but we want students to be successful in understanding mathematical ideas, having that ability to transfer their knowledge into new situations, and then apply it into a new context. So not just these random facts that they'll use now and won't refer back to later, but what they learn, can they then transfer that later in their math classes as they progress. And then the development of behaviors defined by standards for mathematical practice. So what that is that describes student behaviors that allow students to be mathematically proficient, which is exactly what we want. So we're going to enable them to develop reasoning and building on mathematical communication. And by doing this, these practices empower students to use math and to think mathematically, which we want them to think like a mathematician. And as a teacher, it's our job to help these students develop these practices so that they can become more effective mathematicians. And then finally, it's communication, which is important for how are they communicating their ideas, their thinking, how are they explaining, and I know that's really hard for a lot of students, how can they explain their steps and their strategies and their thinking for getting through any type of math problem. So when we also talk about disciplinary literacy, we will also discuss their epistemology, or showing what they know, and these are 3 key things that we want our students to be able to do. So we want them to successfully be able to solve any type of problem they're given, equation or word problem, explain how a conclusion is reached, that goes back to that communication factor, and then show their thinking, here with manipulatives, but it could be other ways of demonstrating what's going on inside their heads. So some learning obstacles that we can easily encounter, as you guys know, being math teachers. These were just a few, there's more, but this is my strategies I have for you today are based on these obstacles. So understanding word problems in math. Often students will read a word problem and have no idea what it's asking them. Or if they do know what they're being asked, they don't have an efficient strategy to solve that problem. They don't know what steps they need to take in order to get to that end result. And sometimes there's the academic vocabulary in there that they don't understand as well. So to them it could just be all these words put together and they don't know what to do. Converting word problems into equations is a big one, and in the 6th grade Go Math textbook, there's a lot of doing that, and there's a chapter also dedicated to that where you get a word problem and they want you to then convert it into an equation. And in order to do that, students have to have knowledge of the vocabulary, and that would lead them to be able to tell which operation should be used, which strategy would be most efficient in solving this. And then since most of you teach a very high number of English language learners, that academic vocabulary is a huge learning obstacle because these students are still learning the English language. So then to throw out ratio and variable and constant and all the different words in the 6th grade math textbook can be very overwhelming for an English language learner. So the 2 strategies that I'm excited to show you about today that I have used and I feel are really effective in helping students break up and solve word problems are close reading in math. It's a cup strategy. So this is a strategy you can actually use in reading and science and social studies, but I love it with math. It involves really analyzing the word problem and annotating in order to get to your final answer. And then a key word strategy for converting problems to equations. And I chose these 2 specifically because they really relate to what's in the Go Math 6th grade textbook. These strategies really seem to be effective from what I've done in my classroom. So let's take a closer look at these. So cup strategy for solving word problems. These are just what the letters stand for. And I have this usually hanging on the wall or on the whiteboard of the classroom. So C is circle, and we'll explain in a second what are they circling specifically. U is underline, P is paraphrase, and S is solve and label. This is a favorite of my students. They actually, once they get the hang of this, really enjoy doing this activity. So I know this is not the best shot on the PowerPoint. You're seeing a student example, but everyone will have their own copy of this in front of them too, so I have it up here. But what they're circling first are any operation words, we call it. Any word that lets them know, are they adding, multiplying, or any important numbers. So here, this original word problem that you have in front of you says, Mr. Waffle is a circus clown. He starts the day with 59 pieces of candy. At the end of the day, he has given away 275 pieces of candy. How many more pieces of candy did he have to get in addition to his original 59 to be able to give away that many? So there's a lot of information there. So usually when students see that, that's that moment of, I don't get it, I don't know what they want me to do. So in this strategy, you circle those important words. So this student of mine circled 59. He knew that was a key number or word. He circled given away 275, and he knew that if he had given away that much, he had that much less than he had started with. He circled the phrase, how many more, because that let him know what he was going to be doing, adding, subtracting. And then he circled in addition to his original 59. Then the underlining is, you always underline the final question. So it's usually the last sentence of the word problem. What are they asking you? So he has underlined that, how many more pieces of candy did he have to get in addition to his original 59 to be able to give away that many? Then, paraphrasing down here, they put the word problem into their own words. What makes sense to them? So not rewriting the whole thing, but kind of what is this question asking me to do? So he paraphrased it and understood that, well, I need to take 275 and subtract that 59 he gave away in order to determine how much candy he originally had. And he got his answer of 216. And I had some students too double check it by adding 59 to 216 to get 275. But it's really, really important. Once they were able to circle and underline, most of them then the paraphrasing became easier, and then their strategy for solving. So that's the cup strategy. And the keyword strategy, again, I know it's hard to see on the PowerPoint, but you'll have all these resources and examples to take with you, and you have them in front of you now. But you have 4 different columns, and then you have a word. So these would be words that they encounter in word problems. Sum, difference, product, quotient, total, less than, more than, any of those math terms, and those are the same words we were circling in the cups strategy. Here they have a column where they're going to write the operation. So sum means addition, difference means subtraction, product, multiplication. Then an example, so they could actually write the example from the book, like that sentence or phrase from the word problem. Then they write out the equation. And I have mine, when they do this, they keep this in a math journal, so it's always accessible. It's not some like loose piece of paper that they lose. They can draw this chart in and go through it throughout the chapter. They can just keep adding to it with each chapter. And then when it gets to a test, they have something to study. And now a lot of them are so good at writing equations, they don't have to keep filling out this chart. But it's really helpful. It just kind of separates all the important information here. Again, here was a student sample. It was just from one word problem, so the whole chart's not always filled out. This is just as they go along through the chapter, they might add one. But this was a pretty challenging word problem for this student, so this strategy kind of helped break apart the word problem. So it said at a local zoo, had a total of 98,464 visitors last year. The zoo was open every day except for 3 holidays, so I like how the student underlined that and did 365 minus 3 to get how many days a year that zoo was open. And how many visitors did the zoo have each day? And they realized they had to use division here. So for the word, they wrote quotient. Even though quotient wasn't in that particular word problem, they knew that it was asking for the quotient. Then they wrote their division sign for operation. Their example was the sentence, they need to find the quotient of 98,400.